Hey everyone, this is Chris, and you're listening to One Cross Radio. And today I'm joined by the always lovely Jenn Arnold. Jenn, how are you today?
I'm good, thanks, Chris.
And Jenn, I have the benefit of knowing through many different areas. She's part of the church that I go to, St. Clair. She's Pastor David Arnold's wife, who was interviewed on here a couple weeks ago. And she's also my next door neighbor, and we're involved in Mishfam. And you're one of the managers at one of my favorite spots, and what we'll be mostly talking about today, 541. So thanks for having us.
Yeah, no worries. It's great to chat about it.
Awesome. All right, so we'll just, as always, dive right in. Can you share a bit with us about yourself?
Sure. So, yeah, I grew up in Hamilton, born and raised, which seems more and more rare these days.
Yeah.
The city is changing quite a bit, and so...
And all those Torontonians are coming out this way now, right?
Yeah, it's true. It's true. So I was born and raised here. My family also still lives here, my brother and my two parents, and as I kind of grew up in the Anglican Church, actually, so that's a bit of my faith background, and kind of as I grew up, I've always kind of been aware of needs around me, but my parents actually moved onto the escarpment into a kind of middle class area when I was quite young, and if you know anything about Hamilton, you know that if you live on the mountain, you don't really have a reason to go downtown. And if you are downtown, you don't really go onto the mountain. And so there's quite a divide.
Yeah.
So it's pretty disconnected from the place where I was actually born for quite a long time. And then that's kind of the disconnect that happened. But then I eventually was... kind of reacquainted with downtown and and a lot of the needs here, but also a lot of the beauty here, and that's eventually kind of where we're landed now.
Yeah. And Hamilton's, like you mentioned, the divide line, and as you were talking about that, I'm remembering spots in Toronto where, yes, this is a nicer off area, but 3 to 5 minute walk down, you're in a less well area, and you can definitely see that. I've been a Toronto boy in my life, but we'd be driving out to go fishing or driving out to Niagara, and it was always like, well, don't go into Hamilton. It's really bad off. And while it's turning around, there is that divide, but it's changing up. So but it's got a lot of needs. So kudos. So when did you become involved with 541?
Yeah. So I mean, it began like quite a while ago for me. After out of high school, I went to Redeemer University in Ancaster. Really only because I was really late in the application process, and it was kind of a last resort, like the only place that would take me at that point. And I was doing a theater arts major, which was kind of off. Like, I'm a theatrical person, but I didn't, once I got into it, it was quite clear that I didn't actually want to be in theater arts. But anyways, the thing that happened there was I was living in this dorm and with some pretty incredible RAs, and they were involved with a thing called Kids Club. Which was run out of Wentworth Baptist Church, which is at the corner of Cannon and Wentworth.
Right.
And basically what it was every day after school, they would have a club in between kind of school time and dinner time. And
nice.
So, I mean, on an ideal day, you'd play some games and have some snacks, but a large portion of it was kind of crowd control, and anyway, so they were involved in that, and I really wasn't at all. But then they were getting kind of lower and lower on volunteers, and my RA was sick one day and asked me if I could fill in for her. So I went down to Kids Club, and it just, it was totally not what I expected. I'm not really naturally a kids person, and these kids were rambunctious and off the walls, and there was just, it wasn't your average group of kids. But we would provide snacks for them, and we would play games with them, and then we would walk them home. So I ended up walking home some of these kids to the places where they were living, and I think that's where it really began for me, because I saw situations at home that kids were going into, and it just rattled something in me, especially because this was kind of the neighborhood that I was born into. And then a couple other things kind of transpired that year. I did a thing called Cross Culture, where is kind of connecting worship and service. And so I came down to Wentworth, actually, with a group of people, and we would do service projects in the neighborhood. We did some painting at a local community center, and and there was something in that day as well where I was just connecting, there's something going on inside of me when I'm in this neighborhood. So for the following 2 summers, because of cross culture and those things that were going on that year that kind of connected me back, it caused me to, I didn't really have anything to do over the summer. And so for the following 2 summers, I did an internship with Wentworth Baptist Church, that same church.
Right, yeah.
And it was, I was living at my parents' house on the mountain. And then I would bike down every day to Wentworth and would hang out with the kids all day and got to know them, got to know their families, got to know the neighborhood. The more that I did that, the more that I felt a disconnect between the world I was living in and the world these kids that I cared so much about were living in.
Yeah.
So, I started to kind of think, what does this look like to actually know a little bit more about what these kids are going through? Also, in combination with that, seeing that there were a bunch of social institutions that were trying to meet the needs of the neighborhood, but ultimately for various reasons didn't. Mm-hmm. And so I actually, because of that, I switched majors. I transferred to U of T to do development studies. And because I saw that a bunch of people were trying to do things, and it didn't seem to really be working, and so I thought I should probably study about some of the mistakes that a bunch of other people have made, and hopefully have some critical awareness around how to be aware of why that might be. And so then I switched to U of T and was there for a while. Also worked at Wentworth the following summer. And the following summer was actually, we did a week of leadership camp, which was with kids junior and high school age. And at the end of that camp, I remember standing beside this one girl, Mercedes, who I'd gotten really close with. And we were singing together, and I just had this picture pop into my mind of this coffee shop. Because over the course of those summers, I realized the staple of people's lives, for the most part in this neighborhood, is Tim Hortons. Yeah. And so that's kind of where there's a sense of community. Yeah. But what kind of grew in me was this passion for real food and gathering around well-made tables and kind of good food, good service, but also this back and forth action between what was typically the divide of the haves and the have-nots, the mountain and downtown. Yeah. And so I just all at once kind of had this picture in my mind of a restaurant where there was all of my families were there, but also some of my mountain friends were there, and I just had this picture that's what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
So, but I have no business skills or anything like that. So it was just like a dream at that point. And so I finished my degree at U of T, got married, and then moved into just the only apartment that we could find in Hamilton, which was in the West End. Got a job at a coffee shop and a restaurant, and just to hopefully get some skills, but really had no idea where I was going with that. Because again, I did not have any other skills to open up a place.
Yeah.
And over the course of that time, also, Dave and I had started looking for a house, and that was a long process, but eventually found a house, and it was great. We're living there, and then I'm working at this restaurant, this coffee shop, and then this girl who'd known me from camp and known that at camp, my role was kind of like the camp mom. It was a boys' camp, and so I would just like make guys good food on their days off when they're just eating camp food all summer. And so that's what she knew about me. She knew that I liked to make food for people, but had no idea about this dream or anything. And she said, we need to go out for coffee. And so we went out for coffee, and she's like, look, my church just bought this building on Barton Street, and we're starting up a non-profit restaurant. It's going to be an eatery, but it's also going to be an exchange. And there's going to be space for people from the neighborhood to come in. Awesome. And it's going to be the best of the best. It's going to be really good food. It's going to be really good coffee for people who would typically frequent those places and have enough money for that. But also we're going to have a pay-it-forward system where people can come in if they don't have like enough to usually afford that. And I was just baffled because everything that she was describing was exactly what was in that picture. That was at that point 9 years before that. Mm-hmm. So it was pretty wild. And then she told me where it was. And as you know, we can basically see it from our front porch. Yeah. Not exactly, but it
is less than a 5
walk.
Yeah, I was going to say it's less than a 5-minute walk.
Yeah. Yeah. So just wild. And so as I look back on that, I just see how there was this deep thing within myself, a call to this, and God like had orchestrated all these things and that I was really not a part of. Yeah. And then I just landed in this, which is ultimately literally my dream job.
Yeah. There are things that sometimes people can chalk it up to coincidence. That's one where there's way too many things to be a coincidence. That is beyond a doubt 100% a God thing. Mm-hmm. Just lined up perfect. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how I got involved. And then I started off there with Miranda, and
so you've been involved from the ground up. Like it's not something where it had started and then you came in. You were kind of
it had started a little bit. I mean, Miranda was the one who found this space and basically stalked the landlord to try and figure out who it was that owned this place. And our friend Kyle was really involved at that point too, with just dreaming up the homework club for kids. Okay. And then there was a couple other people that were involved at that point, and as well Sue and the board. Most of the board has been there right since the beginning. Okay. And so then they kind of brought me on, and I was on board for. It was probably closer to a year before it was opened. Okay. And then.
So still in those early stages.
In the early stages, yeah.
Right. Yeah. That's awesome. And this place used to be a bank or something?
Yeah, we've actually had people come in here who come in here to eat and then tell us that they stood where we were standing behind the counter, but they were tellers at this bank, or they were squatters in between the time when it was a bank and when it was 541. Right. And so there's a lot of history here.
Yeah. And then you dove into that, and that's awesome. Thank you for doing that. Just because I love knowing the history of stuff where it's like, okay, that's cool. What was here before? Was it a space that you guys created, or what was here before? So, what other agencies or ministries is 541 connected to?
We're connected to a lot of places. Basically, when we started, we really didn't have like a clear-cut plan of what we were going to do. It was pretty... Yeah, it was a lot of patchwork as we went as to what would work. And we really only had the cafe and then the homework club. And the homework club is in partnership with Kathy Weaver's school and the library.
Oh, okay, cool.
It's actually kind of transitioning this year into a different format of things for a couple different reasons. But at that time, we were connected to them. And then Compass Point Church is where our board is from.
Right.
And they do our accounting and finances as well.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
Yeah. And so we were officially connected to them. But then as we kind of created this platform for... just a space of exchange and a space of community. People and businesses from across the city have just come out of the woodwork and have wanted to get on board. And the generosity is just, it's insane. Like, so for instance, Merritt Brewery downtown, they did a lemonade stand for us and have done some fundraising for us. Great. Yeah, and like we have a great relationship with brain injuries services, and they bring a lot of their community members here because they find that it's a very inclusive volunteering environment.
Awesome.
We're connected to the Boys and Girls Club of Hamilton. They bring their kids here to teach them about giving.
Great.
We're connected to Detours, our coffee provider, and they also do a ton of fundraising and giving back for us. There's a florist that donates all of our florals from 2 doors down. House of Penny is what she's called. There is a woman, Krista, who runs a writers group here on Tuesday mornings, and she's a Hamilton writer.
Really?
Yeah, we have, the Barton Street Library runs a book club here.
That's great.
Go Hop obviously runs their prayer room downstairs. I can't possibly list off the top of my head all of the connections. Oh, Democracy, like the Democracy Coffee Shop. They have a buttons jar on their counter, and they collect close to 200 to 300 buttons for us on a weekly basis.
Oh, wow.
At their own coffee shop in a different part of the city. So it's just kind of, it feels like, it very much doesn't feel like our own success. It feels like a Hamilton-wide project that's going on here.
Yeah. And just because you touched on the buttons, like, it's something I love, but just for the people listening who are like, what? Can you explain the buttons? Like, so...
Right. So, so we are an eatery, but we're also an exchange, and we're in a lower income, typically, part of the city. So the button system is our pay it forward system. So on the counter, if you were to come in, there are 2 jars. The jar on the left-hand side of the counter is undonated buttons, and the jar on the right-hand side of the counter... vice versa. Is
I was picturing it as you were saying it.
Is donated buttons. So if you're to come in and you have a little bit of extra money on top of what you're paying for the food, and the food is quite low prices because most of our employees are volunteers. Yeah. Then you have the opportunity to donate forward buttons. Each button is $1. And every dollar you donate forward, you move 1 button from one jar into the other jar. Right. And that way, if anyone from the community comes in and needs some help paying, they can use buttons from the donated jar as dollars toward anything that they order. There's no limits to what they can order on the menu, and so it functions exactly as currency would. Awesome. And community members can use up to 5 buttons a day. And when I say community members, I really mean anyone. We don't discriminate against who can use buttons. It's not
like, oh, you're coming from past Sanford. Sorry, it's just cash.
Yeah, we've had people come in here who, they forgot their wallet that day, and so they use buttons. And I always say to people, there's no shame in using them because we all have a time where we need to give, and we all have a time where we need to receive.
Nice. That's it. First time I came here and I saw that, I was like, that is friggin' awesome. And it's still a thought I have every time I come in, and seeing people use it, I'm like, that's great, that's much needed, and something I wish could happen more so, but not knocking anywhere. It's just, I'm sure they feel they can't, but I love that that's a feature of here. So what are some other ways, aside from the buttons, that 541 is connected to, like, what involved in the community? I know you said the writers group and the book club.
Yep. So we have a kids group, a writers group, the book club. We have a teen and youth Bible study.
Awesome.
In the summer, we have a lot of summer camps. We have a soccer camp that goes on. We have we partner with Arasha, and they help connect kids back to the earth. So they'll take kids out to their farm, and they have an opportunity to plant and grow things and meet animals and things like that. And we also have some community gardens out back, and so kids help plant and grow things in the garden. And there's basically, we just kind of open our hands if someone wants to do something, a community-based initiative. We usually say yes. Sometimes it's a success, sometimes it flops, but it's rarely us running all these things. It's kind of, we provide the platform where the community can hopefully flourish.
That is great. That is awesome. And is there a place where people can see that, like a schedule or something online? Is that on a website or?
Well, because it's not all run by us, there isn't like a centralized hub for all the programs going on, because most of them are not run by us. Yeah. So, for instance, if you were the writers group, it may be on our website. I don't know. But like the book club, like you'd find out about through the library or different things like that. Cool. There are a couple of the ones that we are more involved in are listed on the website. Or you can just come in and talk to one of us as well. A lot of our community members who use the services, word of mouth is the best way for that to travel anyways.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, no, it's just hearing so much more. Yeah. Wow, that's a lot to keep track of.
Yeah, and thankfully we aren't the ones who have to really keep track. Yeah. Well, I mean, Sue does a pretty good job of that.
You guys just recently had an event or two on this past weekend. What can you tell us about it?
Yeah, so we had this event called Beans for Buttons, and Detour is our coffee roaster. They have been just insanely supportive from the get-go. They are a roastery in Burlington. They have a cafe in Dundas, and they are doing just amazing quality coffee. And that was one of our passions from the beginning, is for these people a lot of people who are a part of our community here are people who maybe a lot of their meals that they're having in community are at soup kitchens or shelters or different places like that. And we were really passionate that we weren't just going to provide another meal here and fill another belly, but we were going to give the best of the best to people who usually get the leftovers. So Detour Coffee has been like a huge part of that. And this Christmas, what they've done is they contacted us and said, we would love to give back more with what we're doing. And so they actually, the past 2 Christmases, have given us $1 from every bag of holiday blend that they sell.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, which is amazing because it's their best-selling coffee in the year. And then this year, they kind of upped the ante a little bit, and they put together this brunch fundraiser for us. So we had 3 seatings. We had a Santa Claus, we had brunch, and they launched their holiday blend here. So we were serving holiday blend, and everyone went home with a bag of holiday blend. Oh. But the best part of the fundraiser for me was not only could you pay $30 and come, and the proceeds would go to 541, but if you couldn't come, you could pay $30 and it would provide the opportunity for a community member to take part.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so we had a bunch of people, who had paid their way, but a bunch of people who were able to partake because other people paid for them to come, and it was a good representation of what 541 is, that mixing and that overall hoping to create a space of equality where, there's not very many other places where these different worlds would sit around a table together. And, it went really well. We had 3 different seatings. Detour came, their staff came and helped us out. They donated just a ton of stuff to it. House of Penny did the florals for it. And it was just, it was a really, a really amazing and generous gesture by them. Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. And you guys had a concert here?
Yep, we had a concert the night before as well. So a friend of ours, Grant, from Crossroads Ministries, they put together this concert series. And so we had a concert the night before, and that concert, half the proceeds went to Crossroads and half the proceeds went to us. We're really thankful to Grant for putting in all the work he did into that as well.
That's great. That's seriously awesome. That's the word I'm going to keep going back to, but it is. And then finally, how can anybody who's listening support 541?
Right. Well, a lot of people know about the button system, and they love to donate buttons because when you come in and you donate buttons, you can see where it goes directly, 100%. What a lot of people don't often think of when they're thinking of donating is to the general fund. And the general fund kind of covers what we can't cover with our low prices. So if our oven breaks down, or with new projects that we're developing a community kitchen up the street, for instance, and
awesome.
We also really want to pay our staff living wages, and we're passionate about doing things well in that sense. So buttons donations are amazing and great, but sometimes what's lacking is the general fund. So if people really wanted to help out and felt like compelled to give online, you can go to our website, and if you specify the general fund, we love people who specify the general fund, because then we're not freaking out when things break down, or when we're actually lacking in our funds to start new projects, or the funds to feed kids in the homework club, or different things like that don't come directly out of the buttons donations.
Right.
And then the other way is actually donating your time. So we have lots of volunteer opportunities. We have cleaning that needs to be done. We have dishwashing. We have serving food to customers out front. We have food prep in the kitchen. And then little odds and ends around the place, like if you're a plumber and you'd want to do some free stuff for us, or electrical or anything like that, that is super helpful. If you're into gardening and you want to help out with the kids' stuff in the summer, basically anything you've heard of, we usually need help for most of it. So, money and time are both ways that people can help out.
Awesome. And I'll make sure for anybody listening who is interested that the link will be attached under this post on either the blog and on Podbean. Unfortunately for y'all who are checking us out on iTunes, you'll have to head over to either Podbean or the 2099onecrossstreet.com website. It'll be in that post there. All right, Jen, thank you so much for taking some time. I know you got to get to work in a couple minutes. But yeah, thank you for taking the time, and thank you all for listening. Hope you enjoyed. And if you are feeling an interest or a call to donating either money or time, please consider that, and drop the awesome Jen a line. Thanks for listening, and God bless, my friends. Take care.